All right. Well, happy July, everybody. We are getting into the thick of summer, and I generally love summer. It's been a little too hot for my liking, but still appreciate the longer days. Light is not disappearing until 9 p.m. So it's good. It's good in that sense. It's been tough running in 98-degree weather right in the middle of my lunch break every day. So that hasn't been ideal, but appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode of the Weekly Daily Podcast. It is me, Ben Dailey, talking about my life and my journey as a stand-up comedian. It's been a busy last week here, had a bunch of shows. It was very fun. I don't even remember. I'm trying to think what I did during the week. I can't remember if I remembered. It's been a very eventful week. Starting with Monday, went to a concert, which before we get into the concert, I just want to address it's very hot in here too. And if I start sweating at any point throughout the podcast, then it's because I love the planet and I don't use AC. No, that's not true. Actually, it's kind of crazy that the apartment is set at 74 right now for the AC to kick on once it gets to 74, so it stays at that temperature. And it's kind of wild that 72 is viewed as like is that room temperature or whatever, the comfortable temperature, whatever that is. I feel like most people set the temperature at 72, although some like it a little bit below that. But 72 is a comfortable temperature, at least for me. But 74, I mean, it's just 2 degrees difference. But it feels like it's 85 in here. I mean, look, I'm not smart. I don't know a lot about science, but that's somebody messed up. Okay? Same with pools. If it's 80 degrees, 80 or 82 degrees is the pool temperature that's like a regular swimming pool. And if it hits 78, I mean, it might as well be 33 degrees. It feels like it's about to turn into ice. And then if it's 84, you're like, this is gross. This is bathwater. But then when you get down to lower, you're like, what's the difference between 50 and 40? They're both very cold. They feel essentially the same. But a 2-degree difference at 80 degrees up or down makes or breaks a pool party. What is happening? Why are our bodies so sensitive? Or is it just my body that's sensitive? That's likely the case. It was never fun. I haven't gotten in the pool yet, by the way. It's right beside my house, and I'll get in there eventually this summer. I laid out for about 20 minutes last week, read a book, got no tan at all. But when I used to be on the swim team, used to be around pools all the time, and I've probably told this story before. It's not even really a story, just an ongoing scenario where I was on the swim team and I genuinely did not progress as I should have as a swimmer, because if the pool was cold, I would just get out 3 times during practice and go to the locker room and take hot showers and just shiver. And then there'd be, somebody else who's like, it's hot in here. They'd have a layer of body fat that I just did not have. I mean, I was the smallest kid. I had 0 fat, and it was very difficult to stay warm. So, yeah. Why did I bring that up? Is that an interesting anecdote? Probably not. That's fine. I will get into the week and what has been going on in the life of Ben Dailey. It's been, like I said, eventful week. It's been fun. Starting on Monday, went to a concert. I went to a concert with some bands that have been around for quite a while. Not that long, since my teenage years. And had a nice flashback to high school and college days. Went and saw, it was 6 bands. Honestly, it was kind of crazy. So let's set the scene here. I bought the tickets a couple months ago. Got advertising on Spotify. This is the first time I've got hit with like an ad and did something with it. I clicked on it and I bought. And the reason that I guess they targeted the ad because I've been listening to a bunch of this music while I run. A lot of these bands have songs and stuff that are kind of like good running music and just songs that I listened to in like college, and they're just on the running list, on the running playlist. And it was crazy because it was basically, I think, it wasn't your regular concert. It was, no joke, 6 bands on the bill. And they're all traveling together doing, I think, like a 20 years, I think it was 20 years of Hawthorne Heights, which is like, all these bands are kind of like emo rock bands, which on the more emo side of things, I wasn't as big a fan, but like right on the other edge, which is very similar, but just a little bit different, we're kind of more rock pop ish songs. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but the bands on the bill were This Wildlife. Never heard of them before. That was the opener. He did like some acoustic poppy stuff, and then Emery, emo band. Honestly, not super familiar with Emery other than a song called, I think, Studying Politics, and I just remember hearing that song as the background music on a Halo 3 montage in 2009, and it blew my mind, and I've listened to that song occasionally ever since. So I think everybody in the beginning, the first 3 bands were maybe doing like 30-ish minute sets, but I think they were given, if I had to guess, 45 minutes total. So it's like you have 45 minutes to set up and do your music. Whatever that pans out to is what it pans out to. So the first couple people, This Wildlife and then Emery, did about 30 minutes of songs. And then the third band was, Armor for Sleep. That was more of an emo band that I remember being around when I was in high school and college. Wasn't a huge fan of them. Then, and this is the reason I bought the tickets, it was Anberlin. Anberlin, I don't know. I've gotten more into Anberlin, I feel like, the older I've gotten. I didn't, like, they had a couple big songs when I was in like college and maybe high school, and I've just had them in like the mix for running, and then so just by default I've kind of like found some of their other songs, and just, they've got a bunch of songs that are like really good to run to and that I enjoy. Sue me. And then there was I See Stars and Hawthorne Heights, I guess, were the last 2. But here's the deal. I didn't stay all the way through because it was a 5-hour concert. Listen to me, guys. This was a Monday concert where doors opened at 4 p.m. I mean, I had to leave work early just to get there at 5 for the beginning band. And I did not realize what it was. I didn't realize that there was like this big 20 years for Hawthorne Heights for their first album maybe, but I think it was kind of more broadly like 20 years of emo music or something, and all these bands kind of represented a big portion of that time frame. And I did not know that. I just thought it was going to be Anberlin and Hawthorne Heights, and maybe I saw one other band on there. I did not realize it was going to be 6 bands. So we get there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a 5-hour concert, and the band that I want to see is going to be at the end of the 5-hour concert. Fortunately, Anberlin, they did those first 3 bands, This Wildlife, Emery, and then Armor for Sleep. They each did shorter sets, and then the last 3 bands, Anberlin, I See Stars, and Hawthorne Heights, I think were doing like almost an hour set. And Anberlin went first out of those final 3. So got to see them, and then it was like past 8, and ultimately ended up leaving. Dailey and I, we were hungry and standing the whole time, kind of tired, just typical old folks at a concert vibes, which was funny because we were some of the younger folks there. Because again, the heyday for these bands was 20 years ago. So it's a bunch of people like our age and older and still like dressed like emo. And it was kind of funny to see. Also, the bands themselves are aging at this point and singing emo music, especially with like having screamers in the band. If you're familiar with screamo music, having somebody do the wow, that hurt my voice. I don't oh boy. I don't know how to do leave a comment in the comment section if you know how to do screamo music. That's like a very specific uh skill set, and I have no idea how to do that, because if you don't know how to do it, you will damage your vocal cords very badly. And I almost did that right now. But yeah, it was weird seeing gray-haired older gentlemen in their 40s and 50s do emo music that was popular 20 years ago. But with that said, I had a lot of fun. It was at a venue in Denver called the Ogden. I haven't been to a ton of concerts. I've been to a handful for sure, but hadn't been to the Ogden before, so it was cool to go to a new venue. Pretty similar to a lot of music venues that you see. I've been to the Fillmore. I've been to the Ogden now. I've been to, I think, Ball Arena. I've been to Lost Lake. I've been to some other ones like Goosetown Tavern and some smaller ones for comedy. But the ones that I just mentioned are the ones that I've been to for music. But that said, it was very fun. I enjoyed it. Amberlin was very good live. They have a different singer. Their singer has been replaced for live touring. I guess he still records albums, but he's got a family that he wants to stay home with, so they have a different guy who goes on tour and sings for him. He was very good. They were very good. Enjoyed that a lot. I'll spare you the boredom on that for all you folks that could care less about emo music from my teenage years. But had a good time. That was a lot of fun. That was on Monday, so started out the week with a bang. And man, I don't even know. I'm trying to think even what I did on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm not even sure, to be honest. But, worked, ran. It was hot. I was probably dehydrated. I probably complained a bunch. You guys get the deal. Thursday comes around, and this is where all the fun starts. I had a lot of comedy stuff going on, and Thursday was the start of it. Hosted a bunch of shows. Hosted most of the shows. Did a couple spots. So Thursday did a rotating tab show at Coal Mine Ave Brewing. It's a show that I host once a month in Littleton. It's an interesting little brewery there. It is an interesting setup and vibe. It's one of those. It's a very good show to where it's like low stakes, and it's good to get reps in for practice, things like that. And you kind of have to just commit to being like, hey, this is a good opportunity to not have a ton of people listening, maybe, but to stick with it and to commit and to do your jokes and to entertain as much as you can. I'm getting more and more, I mean, not totally spoiled, but I'm definitely doing a decent amount of shows that are sold well and well-produced and have comedy fans there that are there to laugh and have a good time, and I can just do the jokes, and they laugh, and all is well. So I find it very important. I've said this a million times before. I find it very important to be humbled and have shows where maybe everything isn't perfectly set up, to where you have to pivot and you have to just learn how to go with the flow and do what you have to do to entertain as best as you can. And I'm not saying like, okay, well, sometimes you got to do cartwheels and sing some songs and this and that. No, I'm saying like within the parameters of what we're doing and what I'm doing, like Is it better to do jokes? Is it better to do crowd work and talk to the people and just be a normal person? Is it, uh, you know, are these people wanting to hear cleaner material, some more risque material? Are they wanting to hear, trying to get a vibe on what type of material you should do, whether or not you should go into certain jokes or bail out of certain jokes? So there's a bunch that's on the table. It's a good learning experience, a good opportunity to get better as a comedian, as a host. And so I've been trying to approach that show like that. But either way, it was a fun time. It was a fun lineup. A lot of friends on the lineup. Got to see a good buddy, Devesh Patel, who moved to New York. He came back. He's currently back in Denver doing some shows. He did the show there. It was good to see him, catch up a little bit. Dailey was on the show. A couple other funny people. It was a good time. Jared Chandler, good guy. Love Jared. He's a good guy. Also very funny. Everybody did. I feel bad because it's a show where sometimes it's just a tough crowd. And it can be fun if you make it fun, but I always feel bad, just the pressure of booking people and having them drive down and show up. And if it's not a great show, then I feel a little bit of anxiety towards that. But things have gotten better the more I've done this. So you try your best, and at the end of the day, you can only do so much. But I had fun. I did a bunch of new jokes, and the show happened. It's an interesting room. It's like a V. You're kind of in the corner, and in the very middle of the room, it's a brewing section that's like a half level down. So the audience is just like to the left, a V kind of angle to the left, and then a V angle to the right, which is kind of just the bar. Either way, had a good time. It's tough in the summer because it's a brewery that has a bunch of just like, their walls are just straight windows. So since the sun doesn't go down until like close to 9 and the show starts at 7, it's just bright outside the whole time. And there's a bunch of elements that you need with comedy to make it fun and exciting and get the mood and moment right. And if you have it's real bright, if the room is set up weird, it can make it more difficult. But again, like I said, it's a good opportunity to pivot and learn how to entertain and be funny in any situation. Which is also funny too, because now at this point, coming up on 6 years in comedy, I am still absolutely open to doing any show for the most part. I'm not above doing pretty much anything. But I'm saying that also with the assumption that it's within the parameters of like where comedy should and can be happening. So for example, this is a brewery. Having a show at a brewery, no matter if it's a little chaotic or the setup or whatever, there's people there drinking, you're inside, you set up like, hey, we're doing a show, that's fine. Now, I will say I am beyond doing comedy, quote unquote, anywhere in certain circumstances that I used to do when I was first starting. When you first start, you're just trying to get stage time anywhere and everywhere. And I remember doing like open mic. You'd go be like a street performer and like annoy people on the street, or do mics or stuff in just places where I remember doing a mic in a diner. It was like literally midnight, Saturday night. Families are just enjoying pancakes, and you're just like really ruining their night. Not because the jokes are like offensive, but just because they went to eat pancakes. They did not know comedy was happening. They do not want comedy to be happening. So it was very interesting to look back and be like, wow, I was doing comedy everywhere. That's kind of cringe. But I think that's a a very common trajectory for anybody who's starting comedy. You're so excited in the beginning, you'll do comedy anywhere. And as you get better and get more opportunities, you realize, oh, I can do comedy in places where comedy should be happening. I'd love to do any and all of those. I don't need to go like berate somebody in public as they walk down the street and harass them to listen to 30 seconds of a joke. So, and to each their own. Some people do that. And no judgment. I don't want to do that anymore. I even feel it's kind of a weird thing to do comedy sometimes like at a mixed mic. And I say that if you're not familiar, mixed mic is like an open mic for all acts. So like music, poetry, comedy, everything. But there are certain quote unquote mixed mics that don't operate so much as a mixed mic. It might say mixed mic, but it's pretty much just musicians or just poetry or whatever the case is. And I've gone to some where like I'm the only comic and you really stick out. Like people are there and it's just music in the background. And it's all fine. And you go up there and you kind of like ruin the vibe by being like, hey, I'm going to do some jokes now. And that's fine. I'm not saying I wouldn't do that. But I have done some of those where the feeling internally is like, oh man, people don't want comedy to be happening here. So it feels weird that I'm doing comedy. But others have been fine. So it's an interesting thing to navigate. I say all that to say I feel very fortunate to be doing a bunch of good shows where people are they're wanting comedy, they're there to laugh, they're having a good time. So all that said, the rotating tap show there at Coal Mine Ave Brewing is still within that realm. They know comedy's happening. People are there to watch. But it's a good opportunity to just get better as a performer, as a host, to commit in a just more difficult scenario. So that was Thursday. That was a good hang, and I had fun. Like I said, working on some new jokes there. I'm going to try to get out to more open mics, as I've mentioned in the past, but I've got quite a few jokes that are kind of on the back burner that I'm trying to work on and work through, and I need to start doing that. I was able to do it at that show, fortunately. Worked on what did I do? I think I did a joke about acupuncture, which I've talked about. Trying to work through that. I've got a long story about my first interview out of college. And I have a joke about food allergies, which has been doing pretty well. I wouldn't say it's definitely one of those jokes where you go, it works. Okay, it works. It consistently works, but it's not a banger. I wouldn't say it's a banger, but it's consistently working. So you want all your jokes to be bangers. The reality is you can only have a couple bangers at a time, and then kind of the rest of the jokes are what this food allergy joke is, which is just like they work. They work consistently. They get laughs. It's not a joke that I'm going to close on, I guess, is a good way to characterize it, where it's like, it's not the biggest laugh you're going to hear, but it's getting laughs every time. With that said, I have about a minute 32 minutes bit from it, and I've taken a second look at it, or I've just written more. I've been trying to add more and more and more. And I've got the bit worked out as it is now, but I've added a bunch of stuff, and I haven't had time to like say the new things and figure out where they work within the joke and if they work at all to be able to stay in the joke. So I'm excited to work that out. I need to do a better job of continuing to whittle away and work at adding, changing, subtracting, whatever the case is, continuing to work on jokes, mostly adding, because a lot of times here's the joke, and then I'll just like subtract stuff that doesn't work as much, and then it's just like this little skeleton minute-long thing, and it's like, hey, keep adding, keep working at it. Keep adding tags, keep adding new parts. I'm very much like mentally I want to go into the next creative joke. What's the next creative thought that I can pursue and try to figure out? And got to be better at continuing to work away at what is still a new joke. This food allergy joke is not old, but it's also, it's probably a couple months that I've been doing it. So that feels old on one hand, but on the other hand, it's like, yeah, some jokes I have are years and years old. So keep whittling away with it. So I want to keep doing that. I've got a couple other things bouncing around. Again, I just need to get to open mics to hash these out because it's easy to have like good joke ideas that you write out and you have definitely like a spark of something there. You're like, this has something to it. But if you never go say it on stage, then it can just kind of get lost in the mix. And then it's just like an idea that had hope that you never pursued. And then it gets stored away in the notebook and maybe you never pursue it. So yeah, want to work through some of those. I got plenty of those. But with that said, Thursday was nice because it was lower stakes. Got to do a bunch of new stuff for my host set. Friday, I hosted a Don't Tell show at a wine bar, and it was very fun. I've hosted there a couple times. It's like the room is a back kind of storage / production room for this wine company, and I've done it 2 or 3 times before that, and it's always been a very good show. You're like backed up. There's barrels, aging wine barrels behind you. That's kind of the backdrop. And then the crowd's obviously in front of that. And then just all around, they've got a bunch of equipment and things like that. It is a little bit, it's a pretty high ceiling. It's a warehouse type vibe. So a little echoey with the sound. But the show in the past has been incredible. And Friday, it was great as well. It wasn't as good as maybe the couple times before, but those were so good. It was kind of like the best shows possible. So this show on Friday was a good show. And I tried to do a few new things in the host set, which went well. I felt good about the host set. I felt like I did what I was supposed to do. Had a good lineup, a lot of funny people. And yeah, that was very fun on Friday. Did that on Friday, Don't Tell. Did 2 Don't Tell shows on Saturday, which were at a fitness place, at a gym. And it was an interesting, different setup than most Don't Tells, given that there were 2 shows back to back at the same place. So I think that was my first time with Don't Tell. We had a 7 and a 9:30. And instead of a regular lineup, like a regular lineup with Don't Tell, it's usually a couple people do 10 to 15 minutes, and then someone headlines and does like 25 to 30. This time, we had partnered with, Don't Tell partnered with Big Sky Comedy Festival, and it was literally like 15, each show was maybe 12 or 13 of literally like the best comics in Denver. And it was everybody doing 5 minutes, and it was like showcase style. And the booker, or one of the bookers for the Big Sky Comedy Festival, was there to watch, and I think they're going to pick somebody from the shows to be a person on their festival. Now you're probably wondering, Ben, are you going to be the one chosen? And I can tell you with 100% certainty, no, I will not be chosen for that. That's fine. It was a bunch of very, very funny comedians. The way it worked out, so like I said, it was 2 shows. It was at a gym. The first show was about 80 people, which is pretty much sold out. That was basically filled out the entire space. And that was a very fun show. I hosted that show. So I felt good about hosting, did all the things I'm supposed to do, did my jokes, brought people up, kept the energy going, and felt good about that. So, I'm sure the booker saw me, but from the host spot, I don't know how much that's viewed as like, ooh, that was a hot five or whatever. And then, so I hosted the first show. The second show, I actually did a quote unquote 5-minute spot for my showcase for the festival or whatever. And the second show had like 20 people, and they were kind of weird, kind of a tight crowd. I mean, at that point, by the time I went up, it was 10:30. They're drunk. They were kind of tight. They were kind of talkative, and it was fine. I did my jokes, and then I was having fun, just like whatever, just doing the jokes to kind of like light laughter, which is fine. That's most sets that we do is just like just an average crowd. And then I did a joke where I I have this joke where I talk about like praying that something happened, and then that thing happened, and then I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was saved by the Lord." And I say something like um I say something in regards to Christianity or whatever, and this guy in the crowd yelled out something, and I was like, "What's that?" And he said it again. He goes, "Praise be." And I he was kind of chatty with some of the other comics, and then the fact that he yelled something out, I'm doing 5 minutes, so I just said, "Hey, please don't talk again." I try to be funny, but just like, hey, try to address it with something kind of funny, but also to be like, stop talking. And then he just like yelled something else out, and I couldn't understand, so I asked the person beside him. I was like, "What did he say?" And the guy was like, "I don't know." And then, it's like a 5-minute set where you're doing the jokes. So I was kind of like, all right, well, this is going off the rails. Let me just go back to the joke. And so it's just kind of a weird vibe. I mean, it was partly my fault I probably shouldn't have even addressed it. I should have he shouted his thing out, and I just kept going, just powered through it. But that's always a good learning experience, because you're just going to have that. You're going to have times where people shout out. You're going to have situations arise where you're like, oh, I didn't handle that great. And they're all just good experiences to pull from moving forward when you're in similar situations. So I think moving forward, when I'm doing a tight five and somebody yells something out, unless it's like just absolutely necessary to address it, just pretend it didn't happen and move forward. But that's also the funny thing too, or the weird thing is like, if somebody shouts something out, everybody in the room is maybe thinking like, what did he say? He shouted something out. And if the comic doesn't like address and go like, I saw it too, don't do that anymore, then you just come off like a robot, and you can lose people by seeming not like a real person. So it's a very nuanced thing, but what can you do? That was Saturday. I'm trying to think, man, it's just been so hot. I've been trying to get out for a run and get some exercise during the day, but the sun has been zapping me. Absolutely. I mean, I might as well be 70 years old. I'm going out in the sun for 30 minutes, coming back being like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do any tasks today. Work, comedy, like it's and I think the allergies, the pollen out there is still. I've talked to people, Dailey, my girlfriend, she's like, I don't think I think, I'm not trying to call her out. If you're listening to this, Dailey, this is not an accusation, but I think she said like, I think the pollen's gone. But we were walking the other day, and there's just piles of pollen everywhere. I think Denver, it's been a change for me, because growing up on the East Coast, the pollen comes like in the spring, like March, April. And here, it's like, dude, it's been here. My allergies started maybe a month and a half ago, but it just keeps going. I'm like, at what point can I just admit defeat and have the pollen be like, we won. We're not going to continue destroying whatever system it's getting in. What system does the pollen get into? Your sinus system, your ear, nose, throat. What is an ear, nose, throat doctor called? An ENT doctor. I don't know. Anyways, it's a lot. I got this throat thing back that I complained about 6 months ago forever, about maybe eating like silent reflux. I feel that coming back a little bit. I felt that on stage, having a little tightness in my throat. I felt it at work. My job is sales. I call a lot, and I'm very aware and kind of probably more in tune with the issue of reflux or whatever than most people, given that I'm talking on the phone all day to people and I do comedy. So I can tell, like, for example, I can tell when my body is healthy and my throat is not dealing with issues, because when I'm leaving voicemails or talking to people on the phone, I'm enunciating clearly, I'm able to speak clearly, and then a big thing that I've started to be able to clock and notice and understand is with the reflux and the tightening of the throat. Say, for example, I'm leaving a voicemail, okay? And the voicemail is 30 seconds long. So I'm doing this spiel. Hey, this has Ben calling from so-and-so. Just wanted to check in on your inquiry, blah, blah, blah. If you're interested, give me a call back, blah, blah, blah. That's all. You say that all like in one breath, and or you just say that fluidly. It's no problem. But with the silent reflux, I've noticed as my Throaten tights, Throaten tights? That's the name of the episode, Throaten tights. As my throat tightens, I feel the need to swallow more. So as I'm doing this voicemail, I feel my throat as I'm talking kind of like, be like, oh, we need to swallow soon. And sometimes I'll have to like do the message, and in the middle of the voicemail, I'm like talking, and then I just have to stop for a swallow, and then there's just a pause, and then I continue the message, which is obviously kind of odd on a voicemail. It's odd in a conversation, but it's even more odd, and that oddness is exacerbated when you're on stage with the microphone doing stand-up comedy. Any sort of stutter or misstep in the flow of your speaking, any irregularity in that sense just can throw people off and throw them off the trance, can make them, anything that makes people think about anything other than the words that you're saying is not good. You want people to be listening to the story, involved, and if I'm up there telling this, this is a very interesting thing, I want you to follow along, and then just all of a sudden I'm like, Gah. Throaten tight. I gotta remember that. Every time I say something that I'm like, that'll be the title, I'm like, I'll remember it, and then 20 minutes later I finish the episode and I go, what was it? And then I'm just like clicking through the entire episode for 20 minutes to be like, where's that 3-second thing that I said I was gonna name the episode? But that's always fun dealing with this stuff. I'm gonna try to eat some more chicken and less fatty foods to get the old throat back in check. But that was Saturday night. Sunday, Sunday, haven't had a show on Sunday in a while, but had a show this Sunday. Also, before we get into that, I have been playing a little bit of Fortnite. If you're not familiar, it's a video game. It's very fun. A couple of my friends have been playing, and it's just been, that's the main reason that I'm kind of playing a little bit. And now that they're playing some, it gives me more reason to like play a little bit more. I ended up buying a battle pass for the first time. I know. It's a big jump, big leap, Ben. If you're not familiar, battle pass basically is just, to preface this and back up a little bit, a lot of video games nowadays are free. Like they're free to play, but then if you want to have like special privileges or special characters or outfits or just a bunch of random things that make the experience more fun, apparently, you can pay money. And I hadn't done that for anything in so long. But I ended up breaking down and buying a battle pass for Fortnite. It was $8.99. Not a big deal. But the character that they gave me is a woman, and I don't know how to change that. And look, it's fine. I love women. But was really hoping to have a character that was a dude. Well, really hoping is strong words. I really don't care that much, but I'm more frustrated because I think that I'm not figuring out and seeing where to change your character. And as somebody who's played plenty of video games in the past and deals with a bunch of different computer programs and generally can find my way around settings and games and things like that, I'm like, am I just the biggest idiot ever? Or do I just have to be a woman? I'm not sure. But I've been playing that a little bit more, and that's been fun. And, I'll try to balance it and keep it in check. But that has been a fun little addition to what I've been up to. Also been reading a little bit more, which, man, I really fell off there for a little bit. And it hadn't been a ton, but I've been getting back into consistently reading a little bit. I finished Dune 2, which, what was it called? It is the second Dune book. I can't remember the title of it. Boy, did that take me a couple months. And it's not really a long book. It's like 350 pages. It was just laborious. Is that a word? It was very labored reading. It was a tough read. It wasn't. The first book was very good. That second book, not great. But somebody had told me, you just have to get through the second book to get to the third book, which is a good book. So in my mind, I'm like, just get through this second one to understand the background to be able to get into the third book. I'm now in the third book, Children of Dune. Pretty interesting so far. I'm like 70 pages in, so not too far in. But yeah, trying to get back in the rhythm of reading. Hopefully I can get through that here in a little bit. I've got a bunch of books that have not been read that are ready to go, man. They're ready for my attention, and I just got to keep at it. If I can, that's all reading it. You can get through a lot of stuff if you just go, hey, read for like 20 minutes a day. And that's not a ton of pages on its own. Maybe you read 10 pages or something. But that adds up. You go, okay, in a couple weeks, you've read hundreds of pages. But also, if you read for 20 minutes a day, like dedicate that time, if it's a half decent book, you'll probably read 10 pages and go, ooh, I want to keep reading. And then you train your brain to be in like that state of like getting into the book and being able to focus quickly and not getting impatient and agitated. And that's what happens when you haven't read for a while and you sit down and try to read. You read a couple pages, and if it's not like the greatest thing you've ever read, you're like, this stinks. I want to get out of this. But I'll keep you guys updated. Children of Dune, been decent so far. Curious to see where it goes. But I'll finish off this episode telling you guys a little bit about Sunday. Did a very fun show on Sunday. I did the Boulder Comedy Show, which, if you're in the area, I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you're not, the Boulder Comedy Show is one of I think it's the longest running comedy show maybe in all of Colorado. It's been going on for 11 years, a weekly show every Sunday, run by Brent Gill, very funny comic who started locally here. I think he lived or lives in LA part-time, full-time. I'm not fully sure, but he runs and hosts that show. It's been his baby. He's run it for 11 years. It's a very, very successful show, and it's pretty cool because it's one of the few, like, I've been very fortunate to do at this point most, not all, but most local shows that have been going on for a while. I've been fortunate to do many of them. Boulder Comedy Show was one of the few that I haven't done. Ended up doing a show with Brent on Friday, and he just asked me there on Friday if I wanted to do a spot on Sunday. So got to do that. It was very fun. It's an interesting thing. So I've heard it's at this place called the Rayback Collective, which is like this. It's a pretty big complex. It has like outside areas and multiple areas, but the comedy show was in a pretty big open area. I mean, it's like a food hall, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. Even though it's a bar, and I don't think they serve food in there. They have food trucks outside, but it's set up like a food hall. So if you just imagine like a large open space with a bunch of tables, and then off kind of in the back, you have your bar area. But just a big open space. Ceilings pretty high. But nice stage in the corner. I mean, it's a nice setup. And I've heard from a lot of people, they've said it's because it's a bigger space, it's harder to hear people laugh. And because it's a Sunday show, I think, too, people having to work the next day, they're just a little, probably not drinking as heavy and a little tighter because they're probably thinking about work the next day. And it was definitely that type of show. It was a tighter crowd. Don't get me wrong. It was a very fun crowd. And it's again, learning to, I was talking to somebody about this. I was talking to, I think, Elon Stribling about this on Saturday at the Don't Tell show that we did. Talking about the approach to comedy, how much it's changed since I started comedy and was doing open mics like my first year or two. Where in the first year or two, you go, hey man, here's the jokes. I don't care whether you like them or not. I'm going to commit and I'm going to jam these down your throat. Whereas now, I'm total 180. I'm like, look, I've worked very hard on these jokes and I want you to like them. And I want you to just listen and laugh at these things. But also, or more importantly, it's like you guys paid for tickets. You guys are here to see a comedy show. Whether you're a tight crowd or not, or whatever the case is, it's like my job is I now view my job as a comic to do the best that I can to entertain you all. Whatever that means. Now, again, I'm not saying I'm going to go up there and juggle and do cartwheels. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll fall to that level if the show's bad enough. What I'm saying is, every show that's not ideal in every sense is a great opportunity to just learn to do the best that you can in that situation. So I say that to say that this was a tight crowd. Not a lot of laughing. A lot of people there. I mean, there's probably 75 to 75-ish people, if I had to guess. Pretty full room. And they're all watching. They are all there for the comedy show. They paid money. It was kind of a crowd where, like, they're watching, they're smiling, but not outwardly laughing super loud. And I went right after the host. So the host went up. He had high energy. He was doing everything he could. And they still, weren't giving much back. So you can approach it one of a couple ways. And one, I don't do a lot of crowd work. The host was doing crowd work to try to get them in. And you could tell the crowd was like, we don't want to be included. We just want to listen. They didn't want to have crowd work and chime in and out. So I was like, I'm not going to do crowd work. I don't do crowd work much anyways, but they're not into it, so I'm certainly not going to do it. So I go up there and I do my set, and it was fine. I committed. I just did the jokes. They laughed. It wasn't, explosions of laughter. I think they enjoyed my set. I felt very good about how things went. But it's one of those where you see a lot of comics, and certainly I've done this in the past, where you can do one of two things that I think aren't a good idea. You can acknowledge a joke not working, and if it's a tight crowd and a lot of jokes don't work, and you keep acknowledging things that don't work, you then get in their head like that you're self-conscious or that they should feel self-conscious for not laughing, and you can make things worse. Or kind of on a similar side of things, what some people do is they start going in at the crowd, berating them, going, "You're not laughing. You guys are the problem. You guys suck. You guys stink. I hate you guys." I did what I think I was trying to explain earlier, which is the approach of like, just do the best that you can. These people are watching you. They're smiling. They're here to have a good time. They don't seem to want crowd work to go. So just do your jokes. Don't address things that may not be hitting. Don't make them feel bad. Smile. Give them your charisma. Give them your jokes. And that's probably the best path that you can take to like just build a little bit of momentum and goodwill and do the best that you can in that situation. And that's what I did, and I felt very good about it. It feels really good to have, again, to be able to pivot and just be able to do different scenarios where it's like, it's a big room that's not giving much, but sit in the pocket. You do this all the time. Do your jokes, smile, keep the same cadence and pace. Don't speed up. It can be easy to speed up if no one's laughing and you're just kind of like ramming through jokes. And I felt like I just sat in it, smiled, honestly, it wasn't like punchlines were missing. It wasn't like I feel like I'm half explaining that I did well and half explaining that I bombed. I did, I think, exactly what I would have wanted to do with the crowd that was there and what they were giving up. I felt very good about going up there, doing just 10 minutes of jokes, nothing super offensive, nothing whatever, just like, here's some jokes. Let's be a little silly. Let's be fun. Let's smile. And yeah, I felt good about it. So it was fun to do that show. Like I said, Sunday's usually a day off. The traffic it's a long drive out there. It's like 45, 50 minutes minimum. But appreciated very much being on the show. Very cool comics that were on there. Very funny comics. Got to meet and chat to and watch. So yeah, always excited to do any sets. I mean, I love doing comedy. Want to keep getting better and working through it. So that's what I'm doing. With that said, we've gone a little bit over here, and I've got to get back to work. But I will end it there. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will see you guys again next week.